screen. I was just redeploying everything. Let me know once you're able to see my screen.
Yes, Parivi, able to see.
Okay. So today, like actually yesterday, we had to discuss about the adding new column and custom table. Like I guess we are good till here. Okay, yeah. So adding new column and custom table, these things are basically the database extensions we will see today. Okay. So first of all, what is meant by database extensions? So we all know that once we are installing Sterling as part of our Sterling installation itself, Sterling provides us all the database tables. Like for example, we have this ERD. So all these tables are provided by our Sterling order management system. Once we do the deployment in our like particular whether it is local server or cloud server or any kind of an application or like application server, once you are installing this particular Sterling order management system, you will have all these database tables provided by Sterling order management system itself. So all these tables are called as out of the box tables. Out of the box tables in the sense they are provided out like by default by the system once you install. For example, you want an extra table. It can be for any reason. Like, for example, you want to store some customer related data and you don't find any relevant table here. Or you want to store some order information, but you don't find any relevant table or relevant column as part of that particular YFS order header or YFS order line or whichever table it is. So in those kind of scenarios, you want to include more columns or you want to include an extra table into the system. So in order to have an extra column or an extra table into the database, we have to do certain customizations. So those are called as database customizations. So whatever the customizations we are doing on top of the database, we call them as database customizations. So here, for example, first let us talk about adding a new column. Okay, adding a new column. I have a table that is YFS order header table. First, let me see what all columns are there in this table. So here you have like these many columns. But I want to store, let us assume, what can I tell? We would have almost every data here. Uh, Customer. I'm just giving some random guys. I guess customer mobile number. Okay. Whoever has placed order, I want to store his mobile number here. Okay. But I don't have a relevant column name here. So what I can do, I can add an extra column for this particular YFS order header table and I can use that particular extra column for adding the required information. Likewise, for example, you have YFS item. This one we are going to see as a scenario today. So you have IFS item. In this particular item table, whatever the items you have, like for example, you have item A, item B, item C, you have hundreds of items. What is the state of the item? Whether it is a solid, liquid, semi-solid, semi-liquid, or what kind of what you call item it is. I mean, state of the item it is. We don't have any proper column to store that information. So in order to store that information, I can have, excuse me, yes, I can have an extra column for this particular table, kind of an state of the item or state of the state, extn state or whatever column I want to include, I can include here. So likewise, whenever there is a requirement to add a new column onto any table, in order to store an extra information for that particular table, you can use this adding a new column, which is a database extension provided by Sterling Order Management System. So, one more question is, can I do this adding a new column on all the tables or not? Like, for example, I want to do the, what do you call that, adding a new table, sorry, adding a new column on, uh, let us assume this count program. Okay, I have some requirement here and I want to add a new column here. So will Sterling system allows me to add the column on each and every table? No. For example, you see YFS based activity group. It says that this table is not extensible. That means that you will not be able to extend this table to add a new column. Okay. Likewise, there are many tables where the table is not extendable. But if you see, there is this table called as YFS agent criteria. Here you can extend this table by adding column, but not by creating hang of table. That means that on this particular table you can create an extra column, but not create a hang of table. So the next concept is hang of table. Let us see what is meant by hang of table. So basically the DB extensions are three types. One is adding a new column. The second one is adding hang of table. Third one is custom table. So adding a new column, we just now discussed, and like we will see how that can be implemented and what all the changes need to be done in order to add a new column in Sterling Order Management System, that we will see. And now let us talk about hang of table. What is meant by hang of table? Okay, sorry. Yeah. So hang of table is something you want to create a child table. Like for example, we already know that database tables will have parent and child relationship or a kind of primary and foreign relationship. So in order to have, for example, I have a table. Let us take this table only, YFS agent criteria table. And I want a child table for this. Like this is a parent table, and I can have a child table for that. Can I have it? No, because they are telling you cannot have a hang of table. So hang of table is nothing but creating a child table for the existing out of the box tables. Okay, likewise, for example, let us assume YFS order header. Yeah, so YFS order header, you can see you can extend this table by adding columns and by creating hang of table. So this particular table allows us to do both adding a custom column as well as creating a hang of table. That means that you can create a new table called as extn underscore order underscore header, and that extn underscore order underscore header, you can create it as an hang of table for this particular YFS order header. So whenever you are telling it as a child table for a parent table, any record that is getting inserted into this particular table, it will have a corresponding record in the child table. Is that clear, guys?
Yes, brother.
Yes, Pradeep.
Abhishek Noor. Yeah. So basically that is what hang of table is called as. Like you want to add a child table for any existing out of the box table, that is called as hang of table. And creating a custom column, it is as simple as, in order to have an extra attribute or extra information stored in the existing table, you can extend the table by creating an I sorry column. So these are the two different types of database extension. Now coming to the third type of the database extension, that is creating custom table. Custom table is something like you want to create a table where this particular custom table is not related to any table. Okay. Like for example, in one of my project, I have worked on adding printer information. Like for example, that particular project, they are holding hundreds of printers in the warehouse. Okay. And they want to store the printer information. What is the printer information? Like they want to store the what you call, which printer is present in which warehouse, and which printer is a zebra printer, which printer is an invoice printer, which printer is an tick label printer. So that kind of information they wanted to store, because they are integrating the Sterling order management system with some external system called as Loftware. So in order to store the information related to the printer, currently Sterling order management system doesn't have the relevant table to store. So in those kind of cases, we can have a custom table created to store the information related to whatever the client requirement. Like for example, you can even have a custom table to store information related to order. Like for example, I am having some XYZ kind of an customer where they will have uh, some order information which is not related to Sterling, but as a placeholder, I have to store that information in Sterling. So in those kind of scenarios also you can use custom table, or custom table you can use it as an configuration table also. Like for example, in one of my project, like there is something called as Commerce Hub. We are doing the integration with that particular Commerce Hub application, and Commerce Hub is an application which helps in processing our orders. So we have to store the information related to the orders which are sent to Commerce Hub, so that later point of time, whenever required, we can try to verify whether that particular order is sent to Commerce Hub or not, whether we have got positive response, negative response, what is the current status of that particular order, how that particular order is processed, when it is processed, all the information I want to see, because Commerce Hub is a separate integration, especially for dropship orders. For all other orders, it goes to the normal flow. So in those kind of scenarios, I can use database extension by creating a custom table. And there is one other scenario where I have created a table for invoicing. There is some invoicing already present in Sterling Order Management System, but our project, wherever I was working, they don't do the invoicing within Sterling Order Management System. They have some external system called as FIS, and in that external system, they are doing the invoicing part. So in order to store the invoice, if you have to store in the invoice table which is provided by Sterling Order Management System, we have to create a invoice within Sterling. So which is something like you are trying to process the invoice within Sterling. So in order to avoid that, you can have a custom table and you can store the information, and that information can be sent to external system will try to process the invoice and they respond back. So all these kind of different scenarios where you can create a custom table, and this custom table will not have any relationship with the existing tables of Sterling order management system. Whereas hang-off table, as we already discussed, they will have a parent-child relationship for our hang-off table. And adding a new column, it is very simple. that we just need an extra attribute to store, and I want to use that particular extra attribute. So in order to have that extra attribute, you can use adding a new column as a database extension. So these are the three different types of database extensions which can be performed on Sterling order management system. Is that clear, guys? Before I go into technical stuff, what all things has to be done in order to have these database extensions done, and let us see how we can use that and all stuff. Let me know if there are any questions or we can.
Clear, Pradeep.
Yeah, we can continue, Pradeep.
Awesome. Yeah. So first, let us talk about adding a new column. So Sterling, it needs the extra information whenever you want to add a column. Like for example, even whenever you are trying to create a table in SQL, I mean, you are going to create a table in your what you call that SQL database or DB query, sorry, SQL developer or whatever it is. So whenever you are creating the table, they will ask a certain information like what should be the data type of the column. Data type of the column in the sense what kind of data you are going to store, whether it is a number format, whether it is a what we call that a string format, whether it is a varchar format, all that information you have to give. And at the same time, you also have to mention what is the maximum length of that particular value you are going to store in that column. Okay, and can that particular value can be null or not. Like there are certain criteria parameters you have to define in order to create a column. Let us see what are those and where should we add those. So as part of our Sterling order management system, anything we do extensions, like for example, the other day we are doing extensions for template or we are doing extensions for that XSL component. So we all know that that particular day you might have gone to our OMS extensions folder and you have created this folder called as global and template then XSL. So here you have kept that particular map enterprise.xsl, and this particular XSL will help in what you call modifying the XML format and all stuff. Similar way under extensions global, there is one folder called as entities. So in this particular folder, we can create a new XML file called as extensions.xml. Okay. So this particular extensions.xml is something which will tell the Sterling order management system in order to create a new column or hang of table or custom table. So if you see this particular extensions.xml, like I have already created two different columns in two different tables. One is YFS order header table, I have created one column, and YFS item, I have created one column. In Sterling order management system, each table is called as an entity. You can see this is one entity, this is one entity, and they have kept it in one big loop called as entities, and that is kept under DB schema. So tomorrow I want to add a new column under YFS order line table. Let us assume. Okay, let us first we have to come here, check in YFS order line table and see whether that can be extended or not. You can see you can extend this table by adding columns and creating hang of table. If we can extend it, you can just use this particular entity and you have to provide the table name whichever you want to extend YFS order line. And attributes is nothing but number of columns, like whatever the columns you are going to extend in a database table, those are called as attributes. It's not that you can extend only one column at a time. you can extend 10, 20, 100 columns at a time. Like for example, I can have something like this, n number of columns. Okay. So let us just take one or two as example. So I'm just taking two as example. So one particular order line, let us assume I want the ex, like so there is one naming convention. Different companies follow different naming convention. There is no hard and fast rule that you have to follow this naming convention. But Sterling, sorry, IBM Sterling, they suggest us to use the naming convention. Any extra column you are going to add, they expect us to have this extn. Extn is nothing but extended column, something like that. Okay, so let us assume in YFS order line table, I want to store some like what I can tell. Okay, I will just go for simple. Like I can say that extn, mm, item ID will be there already. What else we have? Let me see item line table. Something relevant if we talk, it would be good. Okay, let us we will go with the simple thing. Extn mobile number. Okay, and one more column as extn country. Okay, so I just want an extra information, the mobile number of the customer as well as the country of the customer. I want to know. I want to store them in YFS order line table. And this is the XML name. We will talk what is meant by XML name. And this is the column name. So whatever the name of the column you want to have, you can give that here. EXTM while mobile number and data type. So as part of our Sterling order management system, I was just telling we should need a data type whenever we are creating a extra column, extra table, or whatever it is. Like it can be hang of table, custom table, whatever it is. We need to have a data type. And why would we need the data type? Because system should know what kind of data we are going to insert or what kind of data we are going to use as part of that particular column. So as part of our OMS repository, there are something called as data types, you can see. And if you go to this particular data types, Sterling by default has provided these many data types for us. Like it has hundreds of data types. And I can choose whichever data type I want. Like for example, I want to store some information related to a mobile number. And we all know that mobile number will be at least of 10 digits of size. So first of all, we should find something which is of 10 digit. Okay. And then what kind of number you are going to use. Okay. You can use a type as a number, right? So like you just have to find some relevant, what you call that, data type, whatever you want to use. And you can take that particular type and you can give that particular type in your custom column. Or else if you want to store the country, it is basically, we already know that it's a character or it's a string, it's a variable character. So you can use something called as varchar. Okay, or like this n varchar will be number varchar. So all these kind of what you call that, data types you can use. And there will be data types related to date also. I mean, like, see, you can see, right? There is uh, see, yeah, date format, right? Like many things like that you will have. So whichever is relevant to your particular requirement, you can use that. So here let us assume mine is number, because it is mobile number, so I can use data type as number, something like that. Okay, and it can be nullable or not. If you are making it as nullable true, you can make it as null. If you are making nullable as false, that means that it should have a default value, means like it can't be null. Okay, so then whenever you are giving nullable as false, then you have to give some default value. Why we have to give default value? What if the customer is not sending the mobile number, and whenever you are trying to insert this particular record into YFS order line table, as there is no mobile number, it will throw null pointer exception, or it will tell that this particular value cannot be null. So in order to avoid that, you can give some default value. Whenever the customer is not sending the value, it will be storing this value as the value in that particular column. And description, you can give whatever you want about that particular description, and XML group as EXTN. Okay, so you have to do all the required changes in this particular extensions.xml. And once this particular extensions.xml is modified, of course, sir, Daddy. 1 second, 1 second. Sorry, guys. Sorry, I have to just step aside. Sorry, guys. I had to step away for a minute. Yeah. So we just have to add the required column name and whether it can be nullable or not and all we have to add. And once you add all this information into extensions.xml, you can put that particular extensions.xml into this our OMS extensions global entities folder. And once you put the required data into this particular extensions.xml, you can have your there is something called as entity build. There is a process called as entity build in Sterling. So we have to do this entity build and our smcfs build, then do the deployment. So what is meant by this entity build, let us understand. So entity build is nothing but whenever you are trying to fetch, okay, guys, you guys are there, right? I mean, I'm not hearing any voice, nothing.
Yes, Pradeep. Yes.
Yeah. So whenever
Yeah.
we are doing entity build, right? So basically, in order to fetch an attribute from the database, okay. For example, I have select star from Firefox order header. So in order to fetch the information from this table, I want the information about this particular order. What I'll do, I'll be invoking something called as get order list or get order details. So what that particular entity, how that particular get order list or get order details is fetching the data from this database, it is using something called as entity DB classes. So there is a concept called as entity DB classes. So these entity DB classes are like kind of internal to Sterling. It is provided by the application itself. Like we will not be able to see also these things. So this entity DB classes, they are kind of a POJO classes. I hope you guys are know what is meant by POJO. POJO classes are nothing but getters and setters. So in this particular entity DB classes, there will be getters and setter method for each of the column whatever you are expecting to have as part of your result. Like for example, whenever I'm invoking get order details, what happens? That particular getter methods in DB classes of get order detail will go to that particular table, fetch the information and give it to us. For example, I want to modify some value. I want to modify the document type or I want to modify the seller organization. What I'll do, I'll use some API called as change order API. So whenever I'm doing the change order API, it will use the setter method, set. So basically, it all depends upon the DB operations. Like whenever you are trying to fetch, you are trying to modify, you are trying to delete, insert, create, everything is a database operation. But to do the database operation, you need this particular getters and setter methods, which will be present in our DB classes. So that particular DB classes will have the information related to all the existing columns. But you should also need to have this particular new column, whichever you are creating. Even this column should have getters and setter method. This column should have getters and setter method as part of this particular table. So in order to have that, we will do this particular entity build. So the minute you do the entity build, it would generate the entity DB classes, which has the getters and setter method within, which will help is fetching the data or modifying the data on that particular column. And let us see how that entity build can be done. So as part of our ActiveKite blog, we have given an how to say detailed explanation. Custom table creation. Let me see, do I have custom column creation anywhere? I think so we have it. We don't have it, but yeah. this table and column, the entity build is same. So you can see there is something called as entity deployer, right? So this particular is the command as part of our install directory. Here our install directory is OMS. So under OMS bin, you have something called as deployer.cmd. You have to use this particular hyphen t. Hyphen t is nothing but target entity deployer. So the minute you do this particular what you call that entity deployer, so it will take the target. You can see here, like, quick question, what does hyphen t means in the above line? Hyphen t is nothing but a target, and ant script target name from this particular folder. So automatically, whenever we are giving it as an entity deployer, it will try to get the deployer.xml from properties folder. So let us try to see quickly what is present in that OMS properties. What is that? In deployer.xml. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Yeah. So this deployer.xml. So this deployer.xml, like, it has all the, so you guys know, right? Like, whenever some build has to happen, it needs build.xml. The ant script will need a build.xml. So that is where it is. So this particular deployer.xml will have all the information related to, like, the entity deployer, class path, data types, everything will be present in this particular deployer.xml. And the minute you run this particular command, entity deployer, it will perform that particular db, what do you call that, sorry, db classes. Okay, so there are certain more things before we what you call that try to do the entity deployment and all. We have to understand few things. So we all know that there is something called as sandbox.cfg. So there is a property file called as sandbox.cfg. That is kind of an core property file which is present for Sterling Order Management System. So in this particular sandbox.cfg, okay, I'm like going a little deep today, but I just want to know whether you guys are following or not. Like, is that good so far or
Yes, we continue.
Yes, Pradeep.
okay? So as part of our sandbox.cfg, related to this particular deployer, entity deployer, we have two attributes. Okay. One is no DB verify and reinit database. Okay. So whenever the no DB verify is false, what is meant by no DB verify is false? We don't. So the name, it is a little confusing here. No DB verify. That means that you want the DB verify. Whenever you are giving no DB verify as false, that means that you want the DB verify. Is that understandable?
Yes,
Okay. So whenever you are giving the no DB verify as false, that means that you want the DB verify. So DB verify, what is meant by DB verify? So there is something called as DB verify.cmd. As part of our OMS bin folder, there is some command called as dbverify.cmd. So whenever you are giving no db verify as false, this particular dbverify.cmd command will get invoked, and it will check whether it has the required db what you call that connections and all stuff. Okay. And at the same time, if there are any new columns or tables or any new what you call that hang of tables, as part of our extensions.xml, this particular no db verify is equal to false will create the DDL scripts. What is a DDL script? The SQL scripts which helps in creating the table. Like for example, in order to create a table, what you will do? Create table name. You will give that particular query, right, in your SQL. So whenever you are giving this no db verify as part of our sandbox.cfg, if you go to our sandbox, you can see I have no db verify is equal to false. No db verify is equal to false means you want the db verify. So when you want the db verify, automatically it will go and invoke dbverify.cmd, and that particular dbverify.cmd will create the DDL script for us. Okay. And after creating the DDL script, you have something called as reinit database is equal to false. What is meant by reinit database is equal to false? You want to run those scripts within the system or not? I mean, like for example, you are creating a new column or new table. Let us assume you are creating a new table. So what this DB verify will do? It will create the script. Okay, and it will keep it ready. And whether you want to manually run the script in order to create the column or table, or you want the system only to do it, so that particular call can be taken using this particular node init db. Okay. So sorry, reinit db. So whenever you are giving reinit db is equal to false, that means that the system will not run those scripts. It will just give the scripts to you and you have to manually run it. So for example, if I give, you can see in my system, I have reinit db as false. So what should happen whenever I give this DB verify program? It will generate the scripts and entities jar will be created because you are doing the entity deployer.cmd, and DB will not be updated with newly added columns because you are giving reinit database as false. So what you have to do, you have to get that particular what you call that queries, and you have to manually run in the database. I'll just show you where exactly it will be. Under OMS, under resource. Give me a moment. Just a second, guys. It will be present in some folder. Not in properties. It's not in properties. It's in repositories. Scripts. Uh, it's been many days I'm doing all this. Come on. Just give me a moment, guys. I just have to check some documentation. Just stopping my screen to share. Oh, I have it here only. Sorry. Let me know once you guys are able to see. Able to see my screen, guys?
Yes, bro.
Yeah. So under OMS, under repository, we have something called as scripts. And in these scripts, you can see something called as e-frame table changes, e-frame table index adds, index drop, index modify, index update, these kind of scripts. So the minute you do entity, okay, I'll come again from the beginning and slow. Okay, I want to add a new column. What I have to do, I have to put that information in extensions.xml. What information I have to put in extensions.xml? I have to put the table name, table column name, whether the column can be nullable or not, whether the column can be what you call that, what should be the data type of that column, all the information whatever is required, I'll put it in the extensions.xml. And this particular extensions.xml has to be kept in our OMS extensions global entities folder. Okay, and after keeping here, we will be doing two, three things simultaneously. First thing is you have to do entity build, then you have to do SMCFS build, then you have to do the deployment so that the changes will get reflected. But while you are doing entity build, there is something called as entity deployer dot xml that gets invoked, and as part of that particular entity deployer.xml, it will try to get certain database properties from sandbox.cfg. And to be specific, there are only two database properties. One is no db verify, second one is reinit database. What is meant by no db verify? So in order to have db verify, you call it as no db verify is equal to false. So whenever you give no db verify is equal to false, it will generate the SQL scripts, and those SQL scripts will be stored in OMS repository scripts folder. In these particular scripts folder or SQL files, those scripts will be stored. And once these are created, so what system has to do? System has to run these scripts so that the DB changes will get affected. I mean, like, will become effective. So, but I don't want to do that because I want to see what scripts are generated. I want to manually run it. Or in some particular projects where they don't want the scripts to be run by the system, it has to be done by a Oracle DBA expert or somebody, like, because he want to see whether the SQL script which is generated, it is according to the compliance or not. So in those kind of cases, there is one other attribute called as reinit database. So reinitializing the database to be uh, understandable, you can call it as reinitializing the database. Whenever you are giving reinitialize database as true, it will automatically run the scripts. No manual effort is needed. But whenever you are giving it as false, the scripts will be generated, and those scripts you have to manually use it. For example, I'll just see the eframe table changes.sql. You can see here, I have used this particular extensions.xml long time ago for creating a table or for creating a column and all stuff. Like for example, as part of YFS order header, you can see I have created a new column called as EXTN customer code. Okay, so as part of once I do the entity deployment, this particular script will get added into this particular file. And if you are giving reinit database is equal to false, then it is our responsibility to take this particular query, go to your database, manually run that particular script, then do a build and deploy. Okay, if you are giving reinit database is equal to for true, then you don't have to do any manual activity. System itself will try to fetch that particular query and it will run that particular query. Okay, so that is what information provided here. How exactly it happens when no DB verify is false, reinit is false. No DB verify is false, reinit is true. So you can see whenever reinit is true, then what it happen? DB will be directly updated with DDL created part of DB verify program. Whereas here it will not be updated because I gave reinit as false. If you see the other way around, DB verify is true, reinit database is false. So what happens? The DB verify program is not called and DDL statements are not created. Okay, so there will be no change to the database because no DDL statements are created. So in order to have the customizations done on the database, you should definitely have the no DB verify as false. Okay, so if you are having no DB verify as true, that means you don't want DB verify. If you don't want DB verify, then there is no scripts generated. If there is no scripts generated, then there is no change happen in the database. And whether to have the scripts manually run or the system itself run, you can play with this particular Renit database. Okay, is that clear?
Yes, bhai.
Abhishek Noor, I know it's a little detail, but database extensions is something which is very important. And I can say, to be frank, I'm also a little interested in this topic. So I just thought of covering entirely. Okay, so now the column is created. Let us assume I have already created this column, like as we just now saw, right? We have this EXTN customer code in my system, and I have already also created this YFS item column, this EXTN state column, and all. Now, how to use that column? So let us try to use this particular YFS item table, which is having this EXTN state column. Let us try to see whether that column is present or not. So even this order header table, you can see at the end, you have this EXTN customer code. I have created this EXTN customer code. This one, this EXTN customer. Likewise for YFS item also, you can see. Select start from YFS. So you can see for YFS item also, EXTN state is present. Let us try to create an order and use this particular EXTN customer code. So this is my order XML. So by okay, it's already present, but anyway, I'll just remove it. So this is my order XML. We already know that. So whenever I want to include that EXTN customer code to this particular order, what I should do? As part of our extensions.xml, what are we giving XML group as EXTN? So whenever you are creating an order, as part of that particular order XML under order tag, you can give EXTN. Okay. And what is my column name? Column name is EXTN customer code. But what is my XML name of this column? That is XML name is this one. So this is where I was telling we will discuss XML name later. So whenever you want to use this column in any XML, you have to use this XML name. So I'm using the XML name here. Okay, and I close the EXTN, and I want to give some value for this, so I'm just giving today's date. Okay, so now let me try to create an order. So what should happen the minute I create the order in YFS order header table, as part of this particular EXTN customer code, it should store this particular value. So I'm going and I'll just create an order. Okay, creating an order. Let me take the order number. Let us go to our YFS order header table where order number is equal to this. If you go to the end, you can see 2024-0315. For example, I want to fetch this particular column. I can directly invoke our get order details or get order list or any kind of an API, and I should see that. So I'm just invoking get order details API with document type, enterprise code, and all. So if you see currently, whenever you are seeing, let us check whether this particular attribute is coming or not. You can see this particular attribute is not coming. In order to have that particular attribute coming, you have to give that in the template order, order. So our EXTN will be inside the order. So now you can see the minute I give it in the template, it is coming. Okay, so this is how you can do database extension for a column. Is that clear?
Okay, in the first, when you run without that template, no, it won't fetch.
Yeah, because as part of our Sterling order management system, right? System will try to fetch the default template. So what is meant by default template? As part of our OMS, somewhere under references or somewhere under resources, we have some default templates for every API call, everything. Let me try to find that. It's been many months I was working on this. It's not property. Something to I'll just search for it. So there is some default templates. Okay. So whenever you are not passing any template, it will take the default template for that particular API or transaction, event, anything. If you want anything specific, you have to mention in your template. And our EXTN attribute will not be present as part of that particular default template. So it will not come. And you have to mention that as part of your template. In some projects, what we can also do. Let this come. Okay. Or else let us talk. In our project, if I want this EXTN attribute to come always. I mean, like in all the API calls of get order details or get order list. So what you can do as part of your extensions, you can go to global template. There is something called as API. So as part of this API, you can add a new get order details.xml and you can put the entire template of get order details and you can have that particular extn also added here. Whenever you do that, whenever you make a call to that particular API, it will also fetch the extn attribute. Is that clear, Pawan?
Yes, sir. And that tag name EXTN, right? That where we are, it's defined by IBM itself, or like what?
This tag name extn you are giving as the group, right? XML group.
Okay, okay, fine.
This one you are defining here, right?
Okay,
So you can have like for example EXTN list and under list you can have one more EXTN. You can have like that also.
okay, okay.
Yeah. Is that clear, guys? Abhishek and Noor, you guys have any doubts?
No, Pradeep.
Okay. Do you guys have some 10-15 minutes? We will complete the custom table also.
Yes, Pradeep.
Yes, sorry.
Oh, great. So now uh, let us go to custom table, then we will go to hang of table. Okay. Because hang of table, you will understand more clearly if you are talking about custom table. So what is meant by custom table? Custom table, in order to create a table, again, it is the same process as part of our OMS extensions global entities folder. You can create a new XML with your table name. Like for example, here my table name is additional data, extn additional data. So that is my table name I have given. And as part of that particular table name, sorry, as part of that particular XML file, this is what I have given. What is this? So it is having DB schema that is pretty much similar to whatever you have in extensions.xml. And under that you have entities, that is also same. You can have entities. And under that you have one single entity. And here you can have multiple entities. Okay. Here also you can have multiple entities, but as this is a custom table, it will be only one entity because this is belonging to one single table. So what we can do here, okay, this is an hang of table. Sorry guys, I will take example of person info. That was a hang of table guys. Sorry. So yeah, this is also same. You have DB schema, you have entities, and under that you have one single entity. Right. So whenever you have one single entity, in that particular entity, you have to mention what are all the columns you want, because entity here is a table. It's a custom table and you want all the different kinds of columns. First, you have to understand what are all the columns you want. And this is a person information table. And what is a person information table? Have First thing I should have for any table, I want a key, primary key. Like for example, you go to any table, like YFS order header table, it has some key. YFS item table, it has some key. You go to YFS order line, agent criteria, any table you go, it will have some primary keys. Like for example, I go randomly to some table, you can see some key will be there. Every table should have some primary key. So first I am giving the primary key as extn person info key, and the data type for that particular key, it is generic. And as part of our data types.xml also, you can see you have to give key. Key is one of the data type. You can see it is a number character which is having so and so size and all stuff. Okay, so I have given the key as a data type, and nullable as false and default value as some blank. I mean like empty space I have given. And after that, I want to have first name of the person, last name of the person, employee ID, salary, role of the person, date of birth of the person, whether the person is active or not, employee status. I want to know. These are my columns. Okay. What are these columns? It is very simple. First name, last name, employee ID, salary, role name, and all. But when you observe, I'm using different data types. Whereas for first name and last name, I use data type as username. What is the data type username? You can see it is a varchar, and I can have a size of 50. Okay. So likewise, you have to understand or you have to analyze which data type will be suitable for your column. Okay, so if you see employee ID, it is an integer. So when you go to integer data type, so it's an 9-digit number. Okay, so likewise for each of the column, for salary, it is money data type. Okay, for role, it is a person role name data type. Date of birth, it is a date data type. And whether the employee is active or not, Y and N, it's a Boolean data type. So likewise, first I should understand what all the column names I should have, and I would create those columns as an attributes here. And these columns are by default columns in Sterling. Whenever you create a table in Sterling without these columns, it is not suggested to create a table. What are these columns? Let us see. One is create timestamp and modify timestamp. So these two columns will help us in understanding when that particular record in the table is created, when that particular record in the table is modified. Okay. and create user ID, modify user ID. It is again the same thing. Who has created that record in the table and who has modified that record in the table. And we have something called as create program ID and modify program ID. If that particular record in the database table is created by some server, then it will be create program ID, and if it is modified by some server, it will be modify program ID. And there is something called as a lock ID. What is meant by lock ID? For example, Pawan want to modify data of XYZ employee, and I also want to modify the same data at a time. But when we are trying to modify the same data at a time, it would have a DB lock. I mean, the database will be in a confusion state whose modification it has to take. In order to avoid this particular confusion, Sterling Order Management System has come up with a concept called as locking the database. So whenever Pawan is trying and whenever I am trying, the system will obtain a lock for that particular record when Pawan is doing. Lock is nothing but only that particular operation can be done on that particular column and or record or row. Any extra calls will not be entertained. So when Pawan is trying to modify the data, this lock ID will get updated. I mean, like once it got locked. When I'm doing again, it will try to lock and it will release. Second time it will lock. Third time, fourth time, fifth time. How many number of times that particular record is modified, those many times the lock will be applied, and as part of that particular what you call that lock ID information, that particular value of the lock ID will get updated. Okay, so let me see the lock ID value. Is this confusing, guys? Lock ID or so you can see. One second. I'll just cover your number. So this particular is order number is modified four times. How can I say that it is being locked four times? This particular order is four times. This particular order three times. This particular order is not modified at all. So lock ID is something which will help us in understanding that how many times that particular order is locked. Okay. Pavan, Abhishek, Noor, I want you guys to talk.
Yeah, fine.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So that is the reason why these columns will be default in any Sterling implementation. And you see any table, like you go to any random table, okay, and you will see those columns. Create TS, modify TS, create user ID, modify user ID, create program ID, modify program ID, lock ID. You go to any table in Sterling, okay, you will have that. Okay, so now my entities XML is ready with the attributes. So for every table, as we already know, there should be some primary key. So I'm mentioning the primary key information here. This is my column name. That is the first column name. So the my first column is the primary. And for any table, we know that it should have some index, SQL index. So you can mention SQL index. You as like here I have given employee ID as SQL index. Okay, so now I am having my column detail. I have my primary key. I have my index. So this is pretty straightforward. Whichever is present. I mean, like all these details are similar to any SQL query you write to create a table. All these things are needed. Once this is done, there is something very specific to Sterling Order Management System. That is API needed is equal to Y. What is this attribute? For YFS order header table. Okay. For this particular existing table, APIs are already present. APIs, what all APIs we have? Get order list, get order detail, create order, manage order or change order, or delete order. So five different kinds of APIs are present to get the details, to get the list, to modify the order, to delete the order, and to create the order. So likewise, when you are creating a new custom table, for that custom table also you need an API, right? Because you want to modify the record, create the record, delete the record, all those things. Get the details of the record, get the list of records. So in order to have the APIs created, you have to provide this particular API needed is equal to Y. If you are giving API needed is equal to Y, while doing the entity build, those APIs are created. The next attribute is audit required is equal to Y. What is meant by audit? Who has performed the modification? When is that particular order created? So there is a table called as YFS audit in Sterling Order Management System. So if you see YFS audit, there is a table called as YFS audit in Sterling Order Management System, and all that information will be stored in this particular table. Like for example, I go to YFS audit here, select start from YFS audit. So if you see YFS ship node table audit is stored. Okay. Likewise, anytime any modification done on your custom table also will get stored in audit table if you are giving audit required is equal to Y. Like let us assume, let us take one simple example like YFS ship node got modified. Let us see what is modified on this particular table. You just go take this XML and see. So these many details are changed in this particular table. So audit is nothing but for matrix store 3. Okay. uh, okay, this is basically creation. There is no modification done, because whenever there is a modification done you will have new value and old value. Like what was the old value, what is the new value, it has modified and all. But during creation only these things are created, I guess. Let me try to get order by create yes. I don't think so. We have anything latest. Uh, Basically, in my system, I don't have any audit required is equal to Y for custom tables. So that might be the reason. But yeah, this is just for understanding, guys. The YFS audit required is equal to Y will do the audit of that particular table. And you have description, you can give whatever you want. Prefix. Prefix is nothing but whatever you are using here. In this particular case, I'm using EXTN, but many projects they will use their client name. Like for example, I worked for client FedEx. So if I'm working in FedEx, I'll give my table name as FedEx underscore person info. Okay, so in that case, you can give the prefix and what is the XML name and whether it should have history or not. What is meant by history? So whenever you are creating a table, it will create a history table for that particular table. Like for example, you have YFS order header. Okay, so you have one more table called as select star from YFS order header history underscore H is the history table. Okay, so what is the use of this history table? Whenever you are purging the data, so if you remember, like in one of the context we were discussing about the inventory synchronization, we have discussed about purging the information. So whenever you want to purge the information, purging is nothing but deleting the old records from the table. If the order is placed an year ago and I don't want the data anymore in my YFS order header table, because it will grow the size of the table drastically and it will reduce the performance of my system. So in order to avoid that, I can do something called as purge. Purge is nothing but removing the older data in the table. So once I do the purge, the old information will be deleted from the original table, that is YFS order header table. It will be deleted and it will be inserted into YFS order header history table. Okay, so for that reason, if you want to have an history table, you can create. In our case, our table name is extn person info. So if I'm creating a table, history table will be extn person info underscore h. And if I'm doing any purging activity on the EXTN person info table, the records which are very old will get deleted, and those records will be stored in EXTN person info history table. Okay, so now my entire XML is ready. Okay, and it is again the same process. You just have to put this particular extn person info.xml into global entities folder, and you just have to perform the entity build deployment, and you have to run that particular SQL script if you are giving reinit database as false, and the database tables are ready. So I don't have, I guess I have deleted those older data, but yeah, so now let us see. Table is created. Okay, select from. Okay, now the table is created. How can I insert the record into the table? In order to insert the record into table, we have to have the APIs. So while creating the table, I have given API reader as Y, right?
Yes, bhai.
So because I have given API needed as Y, it will create 5 different APIs. So let us see that. I'm almost done, guys. I'll not take more than 2-3 minutes. So if you see, just opening my configurator. So what are all the different 5 APIs it will create is, it would create, okay, get details, okay, get list, get manage, delete. Okay, so these are the 5 different APIs it will create. So it will be something like manage EXTN person info, create EXTN person info, get list EXTN person info, get details EXTN person info, something like that it will be. So in order to access those APIs, you will not be able to access them directly. Directly, you mean you can't have that as part of your API name. Here you will not have that APIs. So in order to access these 5 APIs, you have to create a service. Okay. So if you go to database, sorry, if you go to your application platform under general, I'm creating one new group. Okay. So let me name it as EXTN person info and in asynchronous. So I'll just give the group name as person info. Okay, or else let me give it as create. Okay, this is my service name. Service name should, okay, it's already present. I'll just give it as a create extn person info one beta. Okay, latest ID. Okay, so you can create a service, and in that you have to use the API. Okay, and as part of this particular API, you have to use this extended database API, and whatever the APIs which are created, those will be present in this particular list. You can see I have, yeah, here. You can see, come on, where is it? Yeah, create EXTN person info. So this is the API which is created. Get EXTN person info, get EXTN person info list, change EXTN person info list, delete person info list. So likewise, 5 APIs are created. Let us try to use create. Okay. I'll create one more get details also for our understanding. Get details person info. Like we will try creating, and we will also try to fetch. So one more API. We just put it here. extended database API. So I'll just do get detail person info, get ext and person info. Yeah, this one. So now I'm saving it. I'll just have to refresh. So now what should be the input to this particular API? So input will be something like this. So my XML name is this ext and person info. Okay. So it will be something like this. And as part of that, what will be my column names? I have to have my first column. Person info key will be generated automatically because you have given data type as key. So my first column name is first name, last name, sorry, employee ID, salary, role name, date of birth, salary, role name, date of birth, yeah, that's all. Okay. So I have to give all this information. I'll just give active as Y, date of birth as 2024 hyphen 03 hyphen 03, and role name as software, salary as some number, employee ID as some number, last name as Pradeep, and first name as yes. Okay. So this is my input. I'll go to our API tester, give the service name as whatever we have created here. This is my flow. So the minute I give it as a service name, I create it. You can see the EXTN person info has got created. You can see it has created the person info key. It has given the required information, whatever I have given. And you can also see this is the person who has modified, created program ID. Okay. For example, I want to get fetch the details. So I can directly take, or else I can take just employee ID. Let us take employee ID. Okay. So if you see, okay, employee ID. Okay. So employee ID. I'm giving the employee ID now. And what is my other service? This one. Get details person info. So this is what it is. So I got the details, whatever is. So likewise, you can use all other services, whatever is created by system. So is that clear, guys, on custom column?
Yes, Pradeep.
Okay. Okay, guys, that's all I had for the day. On hang off table, it is very simple. We will talk tomorrow for first 5 minutes or 10 minutes and we'll continue. I don't want to take much time. And tomorrow we are going to have the session for 2 hours because I want to cover the payment in single go because if we take it two different sessions now, it would make more confusion. So yeah, tomorrow we are going to have a 2 hour session and mostly by end of next week, we should be completing the entire sessions. Okay,
Okay.
that's all I had for the day, guys. Pawan, Noor, Abhishek, you guys have any doubts, clarifications, questions? I'll share the steps, whatever I followed, and as well as you guys can go through our what you call occupied site. Okay, I'll share all that information, guys.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, guys. Thanks everyone. Have a nice day.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you.
Pradeep.
Thanks for extending. Thanks a lot for extending.